My name is Yelena Page, and I work as an assistant director of admissions here at BC Carroll School of Management, working with MBA and MS students. And I mentioned earlier, I have my colleagues, Emily Heaney, another assistant director, and our associate dean, Marilyn Eckelman, who will be moderating today's conversation, joining me as well. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. So we're going to go in order. So Leela, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, why you chose to come to BC for your MBA, and what is it that you're doing right now professionally?
Great, thank you, and welcome all. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Leela Assefi, and I'm currently a senior HR business partner at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. After BC, I was with Johnson & Johnson for 13 years, and then just made the switch over within the last 6 months to the Gates Foundation. So had a really dynamic career at Johnson & Johnson across our different business units in a variety of different types of HR roles. And the reason why I chose BC was simple for me. I was looking for a place where it had a sense of community, and for a place where I knew that I would be able to rely on my network post-program. And I had applied to a variety of different programs all across the country. And the minute I set foot on BC's campus, I just knew. And I think that in life, you have to use that power of intuition. And I think the differentiating factor was the size of the program was really small enough to be able to build and harbor meaningful relationships post-program. And so that was really what stood out to me.
Great, thank you, Leela. So we're gonna go over to Jen.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Foley. I graduated in 2010, so a year after Leela. Right now, I actually run my own software consulting business focusing on product management, which is incredibly rewarding and exhausting at times, being responsible for the bottom line. But post BC, the way I kind of got to this place was spending a lot of time in consulting and product management with other startups to enterprise companies. My most challenging job was working at Wayfair, but also the most fun, kind of helping people tackle and understand the trends in home decor. I chose BC for reasons that Leela kind of already highlighted a bit. I knew the campus really well because I went there for undergrad, and my family's always been a BC family, but I was specifically drawn to the size of the program. I don't think if I went to a much larger program, I would be able to say, hey, Leela, I was the year behind you. And it actually resonated because, you know, some programs are just so big that you get lost.
Thank you, Jen. Sairah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sairah Mahmud. I graduated from BC in 2018. I'm currently a senior manager in HCP marketing at Pfizer. I've been at Pfizer since I graduated. I actually started through the finance MBA rotational program at Pfizer and then moved into marketing about a year and a half ago. So that's been a really, really great experience. I picked BC for very similar reasons, just the community and the people. One of my best friends till today, or still to today, I met at Accepted Students Day, and we met and clicked, and similar with other people that I met throughout my experience at BC. And then I think the second reason was I was really impressed with the companies that recruited from BC. So Pfizer was actually one of those companies, and I was interested even before joining. So just really impressed with where people went post BC.
Thank you, Sairah. And we're going to go to Erin. So looks like Erin Erin's having difficulties logging in. So Lisa, let's go to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Hersh Conlon. Sorry, I got married and forget to add in the last part all the time. But I actually just graduated this last May, so it's hard to believe it's almost been a year now that I've been out of the program. Time really does fly. I'm currently a senior HR analyst at Clean Harbors. And in that role, I act as an in-house consultant for HR strategic projects. So I'm sure, as you can guess, based on the analyst in my title, the data analytics at Boston College was a huge differentiator for me. I didn't have any experience really working with large data sets or anything like that, and being able to tie it back to business needs and help that inform your strategic approaches. So that, on top of the small class sizes, great community environment, and a real dedication to not only improving business, but improving the world. I think BC just does a really great job of having that kind of ethical approach to business that I didn't really see at a lot of other schools.
Thank you, Lisa. And we have Erin logged in. So Erin, would you mind just unmuting and introducing yourself and tell us why you chose BC for your MBA?
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies for being late. I think I had the wrong Zoom link that we then got updated. So hi, everyone. Erin Deadmon. I also graduated with Lisa. So recently graduated. I currently work at Fidelity as a project manager in their financial leadership program. So I am doing 4 rotations through each one of the business units at Fidelity to get a better sense of finance at the firm. And I chose BC for a lot of reasons, but my main one was like the small class size and the networking possibilities. Everyone that I talked to prior to attending BC was super helpful, very focused on kind of helping me get to my goal of attending, always willing to help and answer any questions that I had. And that continued throughout the program when I reached out to alums that were working at companies that I was trying to get a job at, or interviewing for jobs at those companies, and just really helpful community. And now I'm trying to actively give back to that. So it's really nice to be here with you all.
Thank you, Erin. So thank you all for introducing yourself. Now I would like to ask Marilyn to step up and moderate the panel.
Marilyn, I think you're muted.
Not too many people ever say that to me, Jen, but that's to be muted. But just to again welcome you all to this program and to thank you for participating. I'm Marilyn Eckelman. I'm the Associate Dean here at the Graduate Programs, and I still have my hand very much on the wheel of careers. Because I think one of the things that BC does exceptionally well is we look at output to generate input, because we know that's the professional, meeting professional objectives is something that has to be on your mind. So it's a pleasure to see our alum here and to welcome you. So how we're going to do this is we have a bunch of questions, many of which have been submitted by the participants. And I'm going to ask the panelists individual questions, maybe the same question to 1 or 2, just to give us time at the end so that you all can ask questions. So I'm going to start with Jen and talk about, you know, how have you been able, since you're a double eagle, if you will, how you've been able to use the BC MBA as a signature in your career progression, since you've had multiple roles and different functions?
Yeah, I think the BC MBA specifically, really a lot of the experiences kind of that are related to the classroom, but not in the classroom, have been things that I've been able to leverage time after time as I transition to different roles, whether it was just through talking points or the ability to kind of highlight how meeting Warren Buffett and listening to him talk highlighted a different way that I thought about something than somebody else. The experiences at BC were definitely conversation starters and things that I still look back fondly on going on Tech Trek or doing Warren Buffett or different things like that. I know, gosh, that was 11 years ago. So the world is different, but taking advantage of those has been fundamental.
And I'm going to move over to Sairah. How do you manage work-life balance?
Okay, I'm muted. So I think definitely making sure to just honestly, like, especially during COVID, like make time for things that you love to do, honestly, and spending time with family and friends. So for me, like how I manage it is, you know, I try to like shut down my computer at 6 p.m. Like, you know, obviously that's not the case every day, but that's like what I strive to do to really manage, you know, and really stay focused during the day and get, you know, prioritized. So something that my team, we talk about all the time, is just like ruthlessly prioritizing, and we kind of live through that. But also, so make sure you're focusing on like all your important projects and getting those done, but at the same time, taking that time to just really have your weekends and nights. And we actually, again, and this is, I will say, like, how I manage it. I'm lucky to be on a team that supports this, and we try to have a one night, late night, where we'll ping each other like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So we're like, you know, I want to watch Ted Lasso tonight. I don't want my like teams going off at 11 p.m. So we just try to be respectful of each other. So again, like, you know, you put your own boundaries, but also lucky to work for a team as well as a company that really supports that. We talk about too how, and I'm sure most people in you know, all your roles, Pfizer will take as much as it's willing to take from you. So you have to, you know, set those boundaries because there's obviously always so much going on.
Given that you work at Pfizer in an industry and in a company that's been very extremely critical at the moment, I think that's, you know, quite admirable. Moving on to Leela, you know, what's been the most significant barrier in your career? You know, what's gender-related issues have really stifled you at some point?
Yeah, that's a good question, Marilyn. You know, what I would say in terms of the most significant challenge or barrier, I think often, as cheesy as this sounds, comes from within and comes from a narrative of imposter syndrome or thinking one isn't good enough to achieve X, Y, or Z. And I find that once that inherent belief is within someone of, okay, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to ask questions to be able to understand why, you're able to figure it out if you've got a team of people around you that support you to be able to do that. So I found that myself has been, you know, myself has been the biggest barrier. And once that dialogue switched, that you're able to do anything that you set yourself out to do. And from a gender related perspective, I would say it's a similar answer. You know, working in HR, it tends to be a more female dominated career path, but interestingly enough, the leaders and different people with whom we work are a lot of heavy hitter, big time leaders. And, you know, earlier on in my career, you know, I kind of got the sense of, oh, well, you know, we can, you know, almost passive, we can fill you in on that later or what have you. And I think just the expectation of, no, I have a seat at the table and I'm part of this dialogue, and I'm not going to do that by force, but I'm going to do that through influence, through showing that by asking the right questions, by understanding the business, by thinking through creative and provocative solutions that I bring to the table, that you're able to then get there. And once you're there, just knowing, hey, you know, I'm really able to help change the direction in which the business goes or what have you. And I think that inherent belief in oneself is, you know, what's been able to help me get over some of those barriers or the good old boys club dynamic that I've seen throughout my career.
And I'd like to toss the same question to Erin Deadmon. Erin, you work in a finance, which in financial services, which has pretty much been a male dominated environment. So tell us a little bit about the barriers and the gender-related issues?
I was jokingly going to answer this question as just get good at golf and most of your problems will go away, but that's a really terrible way to look at this. So on a much more serious note, yes, a lot of the meetings that I sit in at Fidelity, I am the only female face on the call or the only face in the office. And I would say that being an advocate for yourself and not necessarily comparing yourself to your peers is probably the best way to go about pushing forward in a very male-dominated industry. And that's something that I've really worked towards. And at Fidelity in this program, I've had the nice thing of getting paired with a mentor who is a female that is very high in the firm. And she's senior leadership in finance, and that's been really great. I can bounce a lot of these things off of her, any kind of barriers that I see. We've talked about compensation a lot and making sure that I'm in line with the 4 guys that are all doing the same exact thing that I do on a daily basis. And I think that that's been really great as well. So kind of having that mirror image of yourself at higher levels is super helpful. And then just being an advocate for yourself and really putting yourself out there, because a lot of times I think women have to work twice as hard to get the same kind of recognition that a man does doing the same position. And if you just make sure that you're letting your managers know that and their managers know that and really sticking up for yourself, I think it goes a long way.
Perfect. And for Lisa, being in HR, so what if some of the barriers to women getting promoted? I know you've been at Clean Harbors just a short period of time, but certainly in the HR role, I'm sure you see it every day, and particularly in the business that you're in.
Yeah, so there is just a propensity for there to be more men in supervisory roles than women within the organization. While I work in Clean Harbors, which is pretty female dominated, it's not as female dominated as most HR, just because the kind of work Clean Harbors does, it's mostly manual labor, a lot of truck drivers, that's kind of the internal client base. So for an HR department, it actually has a lot of males in it, which is kind of unique. And I didn't experience that prior to starting at Clean Harbors. But I'd say the greatest barriers is just that initial having them enter into an industry that is male dominated. We do have a lot of women who are now what we call like senior leads for our women's ERG employee resource group. And so they've developed like a mentorship program where you're matched with other women in the industry, in the business. And essentially through that, they're kind of helping them develop managerial skills, like a lot of those soft skills in an environment that they have to be done a certain way just because of gendered notions of if a woman's being too assertive, she's a B, if, you know, whereas if a man acts that way. So trying to basically figure out ways of not necessarily changing the culture or being too clashed with it, but being able to work within the limitations. And while that might not sound great, it is a necessary reality.
I'm going to ask this of all the panelists. So how have you been able to use the BC MBA and alumni in helping you, grow in your career? So either during your time in the programs or beyond. And I'll start again with you, Jen.
Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of like 2 parts. While I was in the program, it was making it clear to people around me what I was looking for, because nobody can tell you who their friends are or who they know unless they know what you're looking for. And at the same time, not being afraid to like not know exactly what you're looking for, like you're just feeling something out. Post MBA, I would say a lot of the connections I've grown from that are based on my classmates at the time. I have a solid group of people that I can reach out to who know somebody, especially as I'm trying to grow my own business. It's been really helpful to have a BC alumni on my resume.
Sairah?
Yes, so the BC, I mean, obviously just such a great network. I was lucky enough, I really wanted to, I knew I wanted to work at Pfizer, and there was a BC alum there who basically helped support me through a lot of the interview process. He actually helped support me move from finance into marketing, and he's actually currently on my team right now, which is just like and we still like, he's one of those people along the way who, like, as a BC alum, we became, very close and friendly, and someone I really trust with professional advice and support. And again, that all just happened because he came to the campus as a BC alum. And so that's been, just a extremely valuable part of just helping my career and moving it forward. And not only him, there's actually at Pfizer a lot of BC alums, and pre-COVID we used to get together quite often. Since then we have like a chat going, and just bouncing ideas off each other, what we're interested in. So I think these are not people who are in my class or even in my year. They're people who older and younger, or not older, younger, but graduated before or after me. So again, it's just that support from when I was looking for an internship until now has been really, really valuable.
Great. Let's go to Leela.
Sure. So I definitely leveraged the alumni network when I was in program. And one particular story comes to mind where I was interning at Johnson & Johnson during the time and wanted to really get the full-time offer, and was using the network to say, who else works here from BC? And long story short, I ended up meeting one of my best friends through that way. We got coffee and ended up living together, and is one of my very best friends to this day. So that particular story has a very personal feel to me. But beyond the program, how I've really used it the most is giving back to BC. It's twofold. It's that, as well as bouncing things off my classmates who are longtime friends at this point, especially when I need career advice. So throughout the years, have recruited a number of students from BC into Johnson & Johnson, where we built a really nice BC cohort. So Sairah, similar to what you were saying about Pfizer, kind of the opposite of that, which was really, really fun to be able to do. And then also anytime I'm having, just need a sounding board or navigating through something in my career or want advice, lo and behold, I know that any one of my classmates has experienced similar challenges or strifes. And so I just pick up the phone and get such different perspectives from people working in different industries or positions than I am. And that connection goes very, very deep and is long lasting.
Lisa?
So during the program, much like everyone else, reaching out to alumni and really getting ins with the industry, I also knew I wanted to go into HR, but HR has so many different buckets. So being able to talk to different alumni and figure out if you want to do, benefits or data analysis, or, be an HRBP and be more of a consultant with the business. There are just so many different ways that you could go. So that was really useful for me to kind of figure out long-term how I wanted my career trajectory to go, and to have those kind of examples and how they would approach it. Also helped kind of figure out what companies to kind of target that kind of have been shown to kind of move along those career projections that you see for yourself. I would say since I have had a lot of classmates reach out to me as a person in HR in terms of, this is the job offer I got. What do you think I should negotiate on? I recently had someone who was doing an interview, and it had to do with, they were interviewing for a role that was a in-house wellness program. So I was able to give the HR perspective of why we do wellness programs and everything around that. So having that feedback loop, but.
Erin?
I kind of teed this up in my intro, but I used the alumni network extensively during recruiting. I reached out to a lot of different people, and that was kind of the only reason that I got interviews at a lot of the places that I ended up actually getting interviews at. It is the reason that I am in my current role. And now that I work at Fidelity, I'm very active in trying to recruit BC people into Fidelity to keep that going. And then I keep in touch with my classmates, as everyone has said, made very, very good friends during my time at BC, and we get together for drinks at least once every couple of months, those that are still in the Boston area, and just talk about different things that are going on in their jobs and what we're looking forward to. Obviously, I'm new in this role, so we're not doing a lot of searching for new things, but I know that they will be there when I need to do that, and the broader community will be as well.
And I think, and just to throw out a statistic, I think the women of BC in the MBA program have always been extremely powerful in helping us recruit other women by sharing experiences. And in fact, the class that entered in the fall of 2021 was comprised of 42% women, which is, pretty significant during COVID, when women are typically afraid to leave jobs. They're less, out there. Men will just say, I didn't want to do this anyway. Women are a little bit more practical in their approach to making the decision. So I think we benefit from all of the experiences that you've had, and you're giving back, as you mentioned, Erin. Let's talk about male allies in the workforce and how we work with them and how we utilize them. I'd like to throw this to Sairah. You talk a lot about having a alum that was in the program. I think I know to whom you're referring. And just, how that's really benefited from your growth, because clearly was biotech or pharmaceutical company even on your radar when you started the program?
Yeah, so definitely. So before business school, I worked at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. So I was in I was in healthcare, but I really was looking for, a way to move into pharmaceuticals, just because I saw the impact they made really working with patients. So while I was, at BC, I was really, again, interested in Pfizer. And to Marilyn's point, there was a alum, his name's Zach, who really, kind of took me under his wing and supported me to get the internship, advised me on what rotation I should do. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but I did start in finance. So when I was an intern at Pfizer, there was 15 of us and 3 women. And so, I think just really having that support, I think we were, again, lucky to work for a company that really supports the growth of women. And I will say, this is a little bit of a side note, but I think is good to mention, is Pfizer in, I think 2020 made a commitment to make sure that, I think it was 25 to 30% of, over VP level would be a woman moving up, and there needed to be all these reviews to make sure that, women were getting the same, being basically looked at the same way as men, because I think as a lot of the companies we work at, men really are a lot of the leadership. So again, I think having that from a leadership perspective, does trickle down into just how you're supported through other male colleagues even at my internship level. But just going back to what Marilyn said about Zach, he was, again, just someone who was really transparent with me, made sure, even something we talked about really openly was salary. So he was telling me, what was appropriate for when I moved into my new role. And I think, again, just having that support, again, BC alum, a male ally, to really have someone that you trust and bounce ideas off of has just been really great. And again, starting from finance, I, was able to build a lot of relationships that I still have today, even though now I'm in marketing, which is more, female dominated. I'm still able to like bring those connections along, and people that I reach out to and trust and talk to. So hopefully that answered your question. I went a little, a little off.
I'm going to turn the question just a little and toss it to Leela. How do you, what advice would you give to a male who really wants to be an advocate for females in the workplace and is just getting started? I'm sure in all your years at J&J, particularly as an HR leader, you witnessed a lot. So, how would you, she's smiling, how would you advise a male how to get started in this?
Yeah, I would say it's a great question. And first, just to give a little bit of pretext, I will say some of my biggest advocates throughout my career have been male. And I've also had some great female leaders and advocates as well. But I think that's part of the hidden gem is just building great advocacy in general, regardless of gender. But, what I would say to anyone that wants to be an ally, regardless of gender or other type of ally for race or ethnicity or anything else, is just be curious. It's as simple as that. It's to say, hey, listen, I might not know you, but let's make the assumption that we have more in common than not. And I want to seek to understand. Help me understand what's made you you and what's shaped you with those experiences. And often I think that we're so busy at work, and especially in big corporate environments, there's never enough hours in the day to get everything done. But if I could just say, and I think COVID's taught this to all of us, is just slow down for a minute. I will say, yesterday, for example, one of the best conversations I had at work had nothing to do with work and had everything to do with one of my male colleagues to just, hey, how are you doing? We've been undergoing a decent amount of change. Let's pause for a moment and have that human moment. And so the advice that I would give to men or anyone that wants to develop allyship is seek to get to know the other person. One should never make assumptions. It's my number one rule doing the profession that I do. And just seek to understand and listen. And throughout that, and then, ideally, if one gets the opportunity to then work with that person, because there's a lot philosophically that one can connect on, but then if you see one in action through the work, it further takes that relationship to the next level. It's speaking up during meetings where someone's getting challenged. It's pausing. It's, asking a key question that will help, you land the plane in terms of getting to that right outcomes. Those are some of the tips and tricks that I would give to some of the male colleagues that are seeking out to be an ally.
So I'm going to ask this of all the panelists, and this does not have to be affiliated with BC or your current work environments, but who are some of your role models, female leaders as role models? I'm going to go to Lisa first.
So it's going to sound really hokey, but I'd say my mom is probably one of my best female role models. So she's a nurse, but she does nurse management, and she did a lot of that in the ER. But anytime they wanted to do cost cuts or had any sort of like managerial project, she always went to her direct reports to get their feedback and to get their input and their ideas. And I just think that that's such a strong leadership quality to make sure that, you don't just say, this is what we're going to do, but you get that buy-in, you figure out what actually works for people on a day-to-day basis and how it impacts their lives. And ultimately, I think that's what a leader should be doing.
Jen?
It's a really tricky question in a way. And I guess my answer would be this woman who I haven't actually worked with, named Amy Sperling. She's a founder in Boston. And I just find her personality really inspiring and motivational. I sometimes have the mouth of a sailor, but she takes no prisoners. We'll leave it at that. She has a very go get 'em, very inspiring. And I just come away from any conversation with her feeling like she can take over the world and we'll all be better for it.
Erin?
Oh man, this is a tough question because I pride myself on surrounding myself with strong women. But in terms of work environment, I would say there's a woman at Fidelity. Her name is Siobhan Schism. She's a BC alum, just a bonus, not related. And she's a fantastic leader, and I'm really focused on becoming more like her in my day-to-day. She very quickly moved up through the ranks because she does a lot of what Lisa said. She listens, she manages her people by listening to them actively and hearing out what they're trying to do, and removing any roadblocks rather than micromanaging and like checking in on them 1,000 times a day. She's much more about facilitating rather than, like I said, micromanaging, and really trying to steer everyone towards the same goals rather than kind of like cherry picking out different projects to divvy up. So that would be my work role model. And then a celeb role model would be Kara Swisher. And I don't know if anyone knows her, but she's fantastic. And I listen to her podcast twice a week. And she's kind of a similar thing, Jen, to take no prisoners. Yeah, pivot. Take no prisoners. And she very much advocates for herself and others through a lot of the things that she comments on. And she's also just so happens to be a fantastic journalist along the way, and part of the LGBT community, which I'm also a part of. So very much look up to her in that way as well. So those are my two.
Great. Sairah?
Great. Yeah. So I think my first one that comes to mind is my first manager at Pfizer. She was a VP in global pricing, and just the way I hadn't really had a manager who I admired really, which is crazy to that point in my career. I really looked up into the way that she really taught and listened and really just like brought people up to kind of like their best selves and to do their best work. And also just a fun person to be around too, a great someone you want to go out with and, just chat about whatever. And she was always open to that, which I really appreciated. She's still someone who like I'll go get lunch with on a Friday and a glass of wine or something. And she's really been there to kind of guide me through my career. And then I would think the second one right now also at Pfizer is Angela Wong. She's reports to our CEO. She's head of the biopharma group and really responsible for actually like, the craziness of getting the vaccine out. So obviously someone that I think everyone at Pfizer really looks up to. She's obviously done extremely well and has been at Pfizer for many, many years. So really great to see her doing like obviously such great work this past few years.
Leela?
I love this question. So throughout my career, I've had 25 different bosses, let's say, and I've had the fortune of having had some great ones, but one stands out to me in particular. And she was a very high level leader. The role I was in at the time was a chief of staff type of role. And the vibe on the street was, oh, you're working for her, she's tough. So this person had that reputation of being tough, but I always make my own assessments on people regardless of the white noise that's out there. And from day one, we just had a level of transparency in the relationship where she would tell me key insights to help me do my job, but then she stood out of my way, and she also didn't know the solutions to things, but let me figure out different options for how we would navigate. And I could tell from day one she was on my side, and she was tough, but tough that made you better, and tough where you respected the person. And so you wanted to do really great work for that person, and would also give me meaningful feedback throughout the way. And it was just in time feedback where I think people might want to mute their line. But yeah, so for example, I remember once where she said, "You have really great points. Why are you giving a disclaimer around it?" Where I would open and say, "Well, we have this, but," and her feedback was, "Just say the feedback." And I remember that every time I want to make a really good point is I just say the feedback, and it sticks with me years and years later. The other facet to that is, I can't remember who said it, whether or not it was Erin or Lisa, but just around surrounding myself with strong women. And that's something I try to do all the time. And I also try to give back to other women. And I learn so much from doing that. And I love it. And that's inspiring in and of itself.
Okay, just one last question, and I'm going to go around and really quickly in 1 or 2 sentences. If you had any advice for your pre-MBA selves, now that you know all that you know, what would that be? So I'm going to start with Jen.
Did you see my thinking face?
I did.
I think this sounds a little bit crazy and a little bit OCD, but start a contact list and don't depend upon your email. I wish right now I depend upon HubSpot to really help monitor my network and see when I checked in with somebody and see when I didn't. I wish I had 10 years of that. So I would definitely use that.
Sairah?
So I think the first thing is especially just take advantage of everything you can, your MBA. Like, I think meet as many people as possible. I think you get into your groove of your friends, and like there's so many more people in your class to just get to know. So I definitely would suggest that pre-MBA. The other thing is just, and this is like something I tell myself to this day, is like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, just, if you don't know something, like chat with people, like just learn as much as you can. It's such like an amazing time to be able to like explore different areas. And yeah, and I would say the last thing is just, sorry, I don't have 2 sentences, but the last thing is just, don't be afraid. Don't cut yourself, like you're amazing. You have great experiences. Don't think that, because this person's done this or that you can't apply for this, things like that. Just, believe in yourself. And I know that's super cheesy, but something to just always keep in mind, I think.
Lisa? Yep.
Pretty much Sarah's point, but kind of in a different direction. So me and Erin were like, the COVID hit towards the end of our first year. And I'd say like every event, everything you do it with intention, because that opportunity might not come around again. I mean, I used to think, oh, well, there's going to be a whole season of tailgates next year. So I didn't need to make too much of an effort to go to every single one. And you don't need to go to every single one. But just, you never know what's going to happen. No one could predict that the world was going to, crash and burn around us in a global pandemic. But you never know if an opportunity is going to come around twice. So just be sure, if you're not going to take advantage of it, that's not going to be something that you regret. Another thing that I'd say relating to the contacts is, just because someone said no to you in the past doesn't mean they'll say no to you in the future. And just because you've turned someone down in the past doesn't mean you can't go back to them and have them be a contact later on. I know that I had said no to an internship offer, and then I ended up circling back with them later on, and that's where I work full time now. So you never know. Every contact is worth keeping alive, and life changes, so circumstances change. So just because something wasn't right at that time doesn't mean it won't be right at a later time.
Great. Leela?
Mine is twofold, which is, the first one is reach out to people, not because you need anything from them, but because you genuinely want to know how they're doing. And if you approach relationships from that lens, in time, it will pay dividends. And the second is, the older you get, the more you realize the less you know, and just stay humble and stay curious. And the more you just seek to understand, the better it will help you out in your career for the long term.
And Erin?
Very much take advantage of the 2 years off from real life that you get when you do an full-time MBA program, if that's what you so choose. Whether that be with meeting people, keeping those contacts, whether it be interviewing for things that you never even thought that you might want to do. Take every call, answer every email, go after the classes that you thought maybe weren't something that you were particularly interested in, could turn out to be one of your best classes. due to professor or whatever the case may be. So really just take advantage of that time. It's super advantageous to learn more about yourself and, you know, where you want to be. It's great for self-reflection. That's what I use it for. So yeah, just take advantage of those 2 years, really suck everything out of it that you can.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna, first of all, thank you all. It's great seeing everyone. And I'm gonna turn this back over to Leila, who is going to take questions from the audience.
So this was very inspiring. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your experiences and your advice. So I would like to encourage our attendees to type their questions in the chat room if they have any, or if they feel comfortable, feel free to click the unmute button on Zoom and just come online and ask your questions. So we'll give them a minute to figure out if they have any questions. So let's see.
Hi. I just have a quick question. What class did you find most impactful at BC?
Let's start. Okay, Jen, go ahead.
The first thing that comes to mind is actually there was a pricing class that is something that I wish I remembered more of. It's definitely something that stuck with me and a little bit nitty gritty, but hugely valuable.
And we'll have Erin also comment on that. You just graduated last year, so it's probably fresher in your head. So what class was the most beneficial to you?
Strategy with Metin. It was great. Learned a ton. Learned how to look at companies holistically, learned how to think differently than what I normally did. He cold called, which was helpful to get you out of your comfort zone and speak up and really defend your opinions and your thoughts, because if you didn't, he made sure that you knew that. So it was a great class overall, and I think hugely beneficial to what I'm doing now and where I want to go.
And we have a question in the chat room, so we'll ask Leela this question. How beneficial was the MBA program as a generalist program to your specific roles?
I would say hugely. So piling on to Erin's comment of strategy, what I think the MBA program really helped me do was take a step back. I had an engineering undergrad, so I didn't have any business courses in that program. And to take a step back to holistically think of it, you know, a product cycle of how everything works holistically, right? So getting those basic skill sets from accounting to finance to strategy to everything in between. What it helped me do most of all was solve problems. And, you know, I think it's rare where someone comes in and knows exactly what they want to do or be when they grow up. I kind of hope no one ever really knows, because that's what keeps things curious and fresh, but more around what key questions to ask, what things to look out for. When you're given a challenge, how can you help navigate and figure out what different solutions are? So I think, you know, from that perspective, Yolanda, it really, really helped me have that well-rounded overall view of going into any role or level and having confidence to know I'll be able to achieve the goal at hand.
Thank you, Leela. And Sairah, can you also comment on this question? How beneficial was the MBA program as a generalist program to your specific roles?
Yeah, well, so similar to Leela, I was a classical studies major in college, and then I went into project management. So I was thinking about pharma, finance. I was, trying to just learn as much as I could. So yeah, very similar answer where all of the classes really helped me like zoom out and think about, and Erin mentioned Metin. He was like my favorite teacher by far at BC. I loved him. He pushed you to really think in ways you hadn't before around strategy, and then really able to like pull through a lot of those learnings through my current job, honestly. So even in finance and marketing.
Thank you, Sairah. This question comes from Rachel, and I'll let our panelists unmute themselves if they want to share their experiences. So what was the most difficult moment during the MBA program, and what support did you receive? So if anyone's willing to share that, please come online.
I'm happy to go. I remember year one was so hard. And that's because I had worked for a number of years and then switching gears to going back to being a student. And also with the volume of different classes and intensity and also subjects that I was previously referencing that I didn't have a background on. I had to figure out how to be a student again and had to figure out how I could take that step back to approach all the different coursework I had. And I was able to get there, but it also helped me focus on time management and how I was going to balance out where to focus my time, knowing the barriers that I had in terms of learning certain subjects. So that was really the most challenging, but it made me much, much stronger in the end. And it also helps you how to navigate and push back in the real world.
I can take this one too. I think one of the hardest things is interviewing for something that you're really excited about and then getting a big old no coming out of that situation makes you rethink a lot of things. But the community that I had built at BC, as well as our career resources and even professors that I talked to, were super helpful in letting me know that there are jobs that will take you. You aren't going to be unemployed coming out of this situation. And so that was a truly rough time during my first year when we were doing interviews for internships, and definitely think I was helped a lot by those around me at that point in time. And it was, I'm pretty certain that I wouldn't have gotten that if I were in a bigger program. So it was very helpful to me.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Leela. I have a question from Izzy, and we'll ask Lisa and Sairah to comment on this. So I've heard a variety of responses from current and former MBA students. As a student, what percentage of time did you spend on coursework versus networking?
I can answer that because I was just doing it. It really varies. So it really depends on the types of internships you're going after, because they'll happen at different points in the year. So I'd say for me, I'd say the second quarter of the first year. So from October to December time, it was probably a lot 50-50 for me. But then I was having very little of a social life, just because that's when most of the internships I were interested in had their deadlines, as well as, that's kind of known as the quantitative quarter, because that's when you're doing finance and econ and a data analytics class. So it really ebbs and flows though, because let's say towards the end of the first year, you might do a little bit more networking because you have a lighter load and you already know what internship, so you're wanting to network with people within that company. So it really comes from ebbs and flows, and it really depends on your specific industry that you're interested in getting in with. So I know that's not the perfect answer, but it's the realistic one.
Yeah, I can also similar to Lisa, I think in the first semester, everything feels like everything happens in the first semester of your first year, but balancing, I would say a lot of balancing of work and networking. I put a lot of time into networking that first semester because, to Lisa's point, that's internships start coming up second semester and you really want to build that foundation. So I don't know the exact percentage, but I definitely made sure to work on it every single week, honestly, every day, for the first semester. And then it went down a little bit. I ended up getting a full-time offer. So for the second year, I was lucky enough to be able to focus fully on classwork, but also keep up some of the connections, but in a lot less intense way.
Thank you, Sairah. And last question, and we'll ask Jen to comment on this, part-time versus full-time program. Can you talk about what aspects did you weigh when deciding which route to take?
I didn't consider super hard the part-time program because I really wanted that fully immersive experience. And I know that a lot of the part-time classes are held at night, and I'm an early bird, so it wouldn't have been as productive or positive of an experience for me. But part-timers are fully invited to absolutely everything. So there are many part-timers that I went to excellent events with, and extracurricular activities. So you get a great experience either way.
Thank you, Jen. So that is all the time that we have for today. It is 1 p.m. right now, so I'm sure our panelists and attendees, I'm sure you guys have work to do. So we're going to wrap it up. So I'd love to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank you for all those great questions and sharing your experiences. If there's anything else that we can assist with, our email is in the bottom right-hand corner. So it's bcmba@bc.edu, and we'll be very happy to reach out to you and answer your questions. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope everybody has a great day. If you are abroad, have a good night. So thank you, guys.